This is the visible color spectrum. Generally speaking, here are the reds, here are the greens, and here are the blues. A combination of these three will create any color you could see. The thing is, this is just the visible spectrum, which is just a part of the electromagnetic spectrum. If you go beyond the visible spectrum, you get X-rays, radio waves, microwaves, and other sorts of waves. But bookending the visible spectrum is the infrared and ultraviolet. I've shot and trichromed plenty of infrared, but I've never really shot ultraviolet for a couple of reasons. First, unlike infrared, there aren't easily accessible and affordable filters that only pass UV light while blocking everything else. With infrared, you could just get an R72 filter. They're readily available and fairly affordable. Whereas with UV bandpass filters, from what I've been able to tell, they are mostly used for scientific and industrial purposes and are priced accordingly. Second reason why I haven't shot UV is the lenses. A property of glass is that it can absorb certain types of UV light, meaning regular lenses by itself has some natural amount of UV blocking built in. They've made special lenses specifically for UV photography where they replace the glass with quartz elements, but they're made of exotic materials and made in limited numbers, meaning they're not cheap. Now these two issues can be circumvented. If you're okay with a filter that passes both UV and infrared light, you have a few options. This filter is made with Schott UG11 glass. If you look at the data sheet, it transmits UV, blocks the visible light, and opens up in the infrared. And these filters can be had for a much more reasonable price. And for the lens, luckily older lenses and more affordable lenses with cheaper coatings tend to leak a bit more UV light. Something like this Nikon Series E lens seems like a good candidate. It's not perfect, but it should get the job done. This is my first attempt. It was shot on Ilford HP5, which has some sensitivity to UV light, but it came out really thin. Okay, this is a complete tangent. I developed this film with R09 one-shot developer. I've been told and have been under the impression that this is basically Rodinal. I actually bought these two bottles around the same time, like a year and a half ago, and I've been using this ADOX stuff without any issues. And when I ran out, I decided to use the R09, but it came out underdeveloped. All the film I developed before and since with ADOX Rodinal came out looking fine. While I can't say with 100% certainty that the film came out thin because of the developer, I'm pretty sure that's the reason. Anyway, I didn't know how to meter for this filter, so I just winged it a little bit. Here are the standard trichromes with just the red, green, blue filters. And this one is red, green, and ultraviolet. Given how these negatives were underdeveloped, it's hard to come to any conclusions, but the differences look subtle. But there aren't any crazy color shifts that I was kind of hoping for. So I shot another roll. This roll was developed in ADOX Rodinal, same times, temps, dilutions, and it came out looking just fine. Between the standard trichrome and the ultraviolet trichrome, the only real difference I could spot is this blue cast. I don't know if I'm doing something wrong. I was hoping for something a little more dramatic, like when you trichrome infrared film. And that's when I had a thought. The filter passes UV and infrared. What if I shot this on infrared film? This is Rollei Superpan. These trichromes are made up of infrared, green, and ultraviolet. And it kind of just looks like regular infrared trichrome. On a side note, I accidentally mixed up not enough chemistry, so you could see this uneven development on the side. Just don't look at it. And either the film was loaded incorrectly or the start mark was off because the last frame was cut off, which explains this. Also, don't look at it. This shot is a little weird because the building should be blue, so at least we're able to see some weirdness, but it's not weird enough. This might be a little bit of a cop-out, but something I noticed as I was putting these trichromes together, if I use the infrared shot for both the red and green channels and ultraviolet for the blue channel, you get results like this. I guess this would be bichrome or bicolor. At this point, I was kind of at a loss. Even though I was shooting this in bright, direct sunlight, I thought maybe it wasn't getting enough UV light. So I bought this grow light, which on its box came with this handy little transmission chart. But unfortunately, these were the results. This frame had no filter. This was a red filter, a green filter, and a blue filter. This is with the UV filter. This is overexposed 3 stops, 5 stops, and 10 stops. Again, I don't know if I did something wrong, but this probably isn't the way to go. Now, I was about to leave it at that, but I had one last idea. What about color film? From my quick research, it looks like most color films have some sensitivity to UV light. It's a little underexposed, which was kind of a surprise for me. HP5 and superpan exposed just fine, so I guess I expected this to work just the same, but unfortunately that wasn't the case. Yeah, most of these are underexposed, but you can see some general weirdness in the colors, like the foliage should be green, but it's blue, or like this scene, which should have been mostly vibrant woody colors, but it looks like this. This was overexposed by 5 stops and the density came out the best. It might be a little overexposed, so I'd probably say 3 to 5 stops over would probably be the sweet spot. Anyway, the results on the color film are kind of interesting and I might revisit it later, but it's a real pain to shoot this stuff, so it might be a while.